the meeting by standing and saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I'd like to do roll call to see if we have a quorum. Could I ask, may I please call out some names and see who's with us? So I'd like to start with Vice Chair Mary Fertig.
I'm here.
Thank you, Mary. Jay, are you here? Brad Cohen.
Yes.
John Barranco.
Here.
John Barranco, you're here?
I'm
Hi,
here.
John.
Yes. Hi.
Mr. Rotella? Bill? Is Bill with us? All right, he'll let us know when he joins. Mary, Jay, Brad. I'm going off my memory here. Oh, Coleman. Is Coleman with us?
I am here.
Hi, Coleman.
Hi, Catherine.
Let's see.
Jackie, there's Jacquelyn Scott.
Yes, Jackie. Hi, Jackie.
Hi.
And last would be Michael Weymouth.
Michael, are you with us? He'll let us know when he joins, but Bridget, do you concur that we have a quorum?
Yes, we do. We've got 7 out of the 9. Yes.
Terrific. Okay. Now, I'd like to ask if I could have a motion for approval of the last meeting's minutes. Motion, anyone?
So moved, Catherine.
Second.
Coleman, second by Jackie. Is there any discussion on the minutes? Seeing no hands raised, I will ask everyone in favor of approving the minutes from the last meeting to say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. I have no nays or hands, so the minutes are approved unanimously. Now, I'd like to ask all members of the public who are with us this evening to prepare to be sworn in by our either city attorney or clerk. And in order to, I'm going to turn it over to either our city attorney or clerk for the swearing in of any member of the public wishing to speak on any item tonight. Shari?
Yes, I'm here. Moderator, can you please unmute the presenters as well as the folks signed up to speak? Please raise your right hand. If you're going to speak tonight, do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you, City Attorney. All right. Now, moving to the agenda items, we have and case number 2, which are related. And so I would like to ask the board if it would be your desire to hear 1 and 2 together. However, take separate votes on 1 on 2.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I heard a couple of seconds. Anyone opposed? I have no hands and I hear no voices. So we're going to do that. We're going to hear 1 and 2 together, but vote separately. Robert?
Good evening.
Hi.
Hi to the chair, vice chair, members of the board. Robert Lockery on behalf of the owner, developer of the property. Thank you very much. I actually have 2 presentations, but I think one presentation has enough overlap. And if I need to go to the second one, hit a couple items, I will. As the chair has indicated, as your staff report indicates, there are 2 site plans because there's 2 different sites, but they are absolutely interrelated. Both sites are the former home of the Bahia Cabana. One site, which is on the water at Seabreeze, is the site I always knew of or thought of most as Bahia Cabana, which was formed. Yes.
I'm so sorry to interrupt your always coherent and eloquent beginning, but I need disclosures, so I apologize.
Thank you.
I'd like to start with disclosures, and I'd like to start with John Barranco on 1 and 2.
Yes, spoke to applicant's attorney. Yes, spoke to applicant's attorney.
Thank you, John. Brad?
I spoke with Mr. Lockery, and I have driven past the site.
Coleman?
I spoke with counsel for the applicant.
Bill? Okay, Bill's still not with us. Jackie?
Yes, I spoke to Mr. Lockery and I've driven by the site about 100 times in my life,
Jay?
100?
at least.
Spoke with applicant's attorney.
Thanks, Jay. Michael? Still not with us. Mary?
I visited the site, spoke with Mr. Lockery and Bill Brown.
And I visited the site, That's all I did. I visited the site. Okay, Robert, I'm so sorry to interrupt. Back to you.
Not a problem whatsoever. So as I was indicating, the Bahia Cabana, which I've also driven by more than 100 times, the site that we know as Bahia Cabana is this site right here. The second application, which is actually number 1 on your agenda, is the site right here, which I'll show you in just a second, where they both lay out. Just a little bit of history on the site in the rather recent history. There was previously a proposal for these sites that came before the, oh no, that's not working. All right, so I'm going to go back to a different way of doing this. There were proposals before the city previously on this site before our clients purchased the property. In 2017, Hurricane Irma came through, did significant damage to the properties, and the hotel was closed. The Bahia Cabana piece that's outlined in red here was a hotel with a large component, which was a restaurant component. Subsequent to that, our clients, the current owners of the property, purchased the property last year and began to clear up the numerous code violations and building violations that were against the property as a result of it being damaged by the hurricane. In addition, there were a lot of concerns from folks in the direct neighborhood regarding it being an eyesore. So the first thing they began to do is begin that demolition process, which was finished up, again, as I said, last year. They actually purchased the property 2 years, in 2018. Now, wouldn't you know it, I am now having problems, which is the first time, going to the next screen.
Robert, try using your scroll wheel on your mouse. If not, your arrows on your keypad, on your keyboard.
I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry about this. Let me try it again. Maybe if I switch to a different graphic. All right. So this is the hotel site. You can see that. And this is the residential site. 2 parts to this project. The hotel site includes a 124-room hotel with 6 residential units on the top 2 floors, penthouse units. The residential portion of the project, which is landlocked directly adjacent to the B Ocean, which is over left here where my hand is, the B Ocean parking lot, which is to the south, and the new B Ocean parking garage, which is to the east. That project is 37 residential units. There are 2 zoning districts in place here. The portion on the north, which is where the hotel is within the city's Central Beach SBMHA district, which allows buildings up to 120 feet in height. The residential portion, which is down here, is within the city's RMH 60 residential zoning district, which would allow a project up to 240 feet in height and actually 49 units on this site. So again, we're only building 37 residential units and our height is capped at 120 feet on the residential piece, and the hotel is actually only 115 feet. I am now going to try again to go to the other screen.
And while you're doing that, Robert, I'd like to state for the record that Bill Rotella has joined us. Bill, could you give us disclosures on this item?
I have been to the site and I've spoken to Robert about the site.
Thank you, Bill. Back to you, Robert.
Thank you. And I should also say we, in compliance with the governor's order, we do have other members of the team here. We're all keeping social distance, but our architect, George Fletcher, and Suzanne Danielson, our traffic engineer, is here as well if there's any questions at the conclusion of my presentation. So here's the here's the hotel piece that we just talked about. This is the proposal for the building. As I said, it's a 12-story building, or actually 11 stories in 120 feet. The ground floor level, which you see here, is the lobby area. It has an outdoor cafe facing the street, as well as restaurant and amenities facing the water side of the project. The second floor is made up of amenities for the hotel guests, including a spa, a workout room. The next 5 floors of the building are the hotel rooms, as I said, 124 rooms, and the top 2 floors are residential with an amenity as well on the top of that deck. One of the things that's important on the north side of the property is the building has been set back so that there's a large view corridor and pathway from the street back to the water. So folks who are walking along the beach will see down into the marina, the Bahia Mar Marina and beyond, a large pathway with an outdoor restaurant cafe area right here on the corner. And as you can see, some really nice architectural elements to the building itself, which the overall design is glassed with these other features. The other thing we did in the building, or the architects did rather, George and his group and Joe, was bring the building back to have it step back as you moved higher up the building. So for example, on the ground floor, the building meets all the minimum requirements on the east side along the water, also along the street edge, again with this large pathway up against the fire station on the north side. But then as you go up the building steps back. Specifically at, just as an example, on the second floor, we go from 15 feet to 20 feet. The third floor, we set back 30 feet. The fourth floor, 40 feet. And when you get up to the 6th floor and above, it's set back an entire 52 feet. We believe that gives the project a little more interest. It creates for some great balconies. But what it also does is sensitive to our neighbors. Our immediate neighbors to the north have a residential building, which is right here. Having this step back helps protect them. And then the residential building that's the closest to our property line is where our pool and patio area is. So the building is completely stepped back. As you can see, it's kind of a boomerang shape. This is the ground floor. A change that was made through the process, we made a lot of changes at the request of city staff, but one additional request that came directly from the neighborhood is originally, and you'll see this in some of the renderings, we actually had our driveway in and out drop off at this location, if you can see my hand, a little bit closer to the main lobby. The concern from our neighbors directly to the west was as traffic comes in and out off Harbor Drive, they were concerned about having that intersection, or not intersection, but those driveways so close to that intersection. And so they asked if we could move that further to the west. It accomplished a couple things. It provided a new green area up front. We still have the wide sidewalks, which are landscape lined. But in addition, it allowed this driveway to even up with our loading zone. So rather than have multiple entrances in and out of the street, we only have one in and one out with plenty of stacking and loading area. So we think that was an improvement at the request of the neighbors. As I said, the second floor is amenity area, the spa and gym. As you go up, this is a typical hotel floor. Again, it kind of steps back as you go up the building. At the top are the residential floors and a rooftop amenity deck. This is a view from the water, kind of a drone looking back at the site. This is the hotel site we've been talking about, and this is the residential building that sits on the dry site a little bit further to the south. Here's a view again of the hotel. This is the old configuration of the driveway. As I said, the driveway now is here, so there's less interference with both pedestrians and vehicular activity along the street. Here's a view of the lobby, gives you a nice view. And here's a view from the water looking back at the building, again, identifying the step backs. This is the hotel building and this is the residential building on the right. So that is the presentation on the on the hotel building. I'm going to switch to the inbound residential building real quickly. Won't get into too much more detail, but can show you some of the design elements of that. All right, so again, this is the site where that residential building is going. There's where that site is, again, sandwiched between the Beocean properties. Here, similar to what we did on the hotel piece, the building steps back as it goes up. We have a large, wide landscape buffer around the entire project at the ground floor level. The podium then comes up for the parking levels, which are above that, and then the residential steps back even further. We have 20 feet of setback for the parking. As you move up the building, we go to about, at the top level, about 55, 60 feet of setback all the way around the top of the building. So that is the appearance again of the parking area, the residential above, these large patios which serve the residential users, the drop off and pickoff, as well as the entry into the garage, installing sidewalk and landscaping along Harbor Drive, which will match what we're doing on our side and what B Ocean has done behind us. This is the proposed B Ocean building, which was approved about a year ago for a new hotel structure back there, and that's their garage. So just put those in perspective. And that is the Harborage condominium, which is further to the west. This is a view from a little bit lower. This is a view looking right into that structure. And again, showing the ground level and how the building steps back, the parking podium, and then the actual residential floors step back significantly as you go up the building. So that is an overview of both projects, which, as we said, are connected through their design and through parking. We'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Robert. To the board, is it your desire to incorporate the staff report as part of the record this evening on both items 1 and 2?
Yes, so moved.
Second.
Motion by Mary, second by who? I'm sorry.
Jay.
Jay, thank you. All right, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any opposed? I see no opposed. I see no hands. How do I get back to the screen where I can see all the board members? Oh, perfect. Okay. All right. So do we have, I don't have any hands right now, so I'm going to ask if we have any. Okay, Jackie.
Robert, could you go over the parking again for the hotel, where that is?
Certainly. So the parking is actually located within the residential structure. We have a pickup and drop-off area at the hotel, but the valet operations, the parking itself is all in the residential building. That way we don't have a big parking garage sitting right up against the water.
Okay, thank you.
I don't see any other hands, so I'm going to ask if there are any members of the public wishing to speak on either items 1, PLN Site 2004-0006, or item 2, PLN Site 2004-0008. Do we have any members of the public wishing to speak on items 1 or 2?
Good evening, Chair. This is Trisha Logan. We have 2 members of the public that signed up to speak on items 1 and 2. The first member is Brandon Lopez, and he is on the attendee list. Jerry, could you unmute Brandon?
Hello, Brandon. Can you hear?
Hello. Yes. Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right. Wonderful. Very good evening to everyone. And my name's Brandon Lopez. I am the president of Villa Madrid Co-op Apartments that is directly across the street. They're the little turquoise buildings, 6 turquoise buildings. Can be seen all the way in the right-hand corner of a lot of the renderings, and it's right across from that that hotel building, that old Bahia Beach apartment building that's 3030 Harbor Drive. And my question, the whole project ultimately is, what kind of infrastructure upgrades are going to be done along Harbor Drive, which is somewhat of a forgotten area. The sewer systems often flood during the any kind of a hard downpour storms on Harbor Drive, and we have the very yellow, nasty water that I'm sure you all have seen and stuff of that nature. So tell me what kind of infrastructure upgrades are going to be happening here, and how is this going to be impacting us?
So Mr. Lopez, I'd like to first talk to you about the format for the Planning and Zoning Board meetings. And yes, you're provided 3 minutes for comment, but it's not really a question and answer session.
Okay.
I want you to know that by virtue of this project being in front of us this evening,
yes,
it has passed and received sign-offs by every single department within the City of Fort Lauderdale that deals with building projects.
Okay.
That said, I'm going to turn it to Robert for a very limited point of time. to add whatever he might in addition to that. And I would encourage you in the future, if you have a project like this going on in proximity to your home, to get in touch with city staff and make your points known to them in advance so that there's time for them to respond.
Okay, and that's no problem. So, you know,
Okay, so Mr. Lopez, I'm going to turn it over to Robert, and then we're going to move on to the next speaker.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. And thank you, Mr. Lopez. I don't know if you were able to attend the public participation meeting on August 13th, but the items that you raised are things that we hear on all these projects around this direct vicinity. So they're good questions. The primary upgrades that we will be making are to the realm around the project, and that is the new sidewalks will be installed. We're getting rid of all off-street or pull-out parking, bringing all that parking in, so it's all off-street rather, so you don't have cars pulling in and out of the back-out parking that you have there currently. Sidewalks and landscape enhancements. The B Ocean, similarly, when they got approval, also was having to make similar improvements. So you're starting to see that occur as you go further to the west. Obviously, your project, I know you have back-out parking, so it'd be difficult to do that. But certainly the entrance will have a new look into your neighborhood, and we believe it is significantly enhanced. As it relates to stormwater as well, we will be making improvements at our site for stormwater. And as far as drinking water and sewage is concerned, the city does do an exhaustive study of that now and did determine that there is sufficient capacity available to handle this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. And Mr. Lopez, any questions? I'm sure Robert will be happy to stay in touch with you. Staff will be happy to stay in touch with you as the project goes on, but they have received the necessary approvals from utilities, infrastructure, et cetera, to be here tonight. Thank you very much.
Wonderful.
Thank you. And Mary, you had a question? Mary?
I'm sorry. Actually, I'll ask it. I was just going to ask Robert to explain what he had done for the public participation, but we can do that after the speakers.
Okay. We have another speaker, I think, Jerry mentioned.
Yes, our next speaker is Thomas Pazanka, and he is on the attendee list. Jerry, could you unmute Thomas?
Yes, Thomas, are you there?
Hey, how's it going? Thomas Pazanka.
Hi, Thomas, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to attend the meeting and put up my support for the project. I think it's a beautiful project, and I think it will really help the neighborhood here. And that's how I just want to use my 3 minutes. And thank you for the beautiful project, Robert. Thank you, and helping the community.
Thank you, Thomas. All right, any other public speakers wishing to speak on items 1 or 2?
Yes.
We have one person who has their hand raised, David Glassman.
David, are you with us?
I'm here.
Hi, David. Go ahead.
We had spoken about the project from the Harborage Place condominium in reference to that, just not the site and the street contiguous with the building, but with the entire street. And I don't know if Robert would address what could be done for the entire Harbor Drive, since it's a north-south connected road. Robert, if you could speak to the rest of the street, because the flooding is on the south as well as the north. Thank you.
So, sir, that is somewhat outside the scope of the approval of this project this evening. By virtue of the fact that, again, the project is here tonight, that means that city staff of every department has signed off on it. But I will turn it over to Robert in case he has any comments. Robert?
Yes, thank you, David. Certainly what we're able to do is what's directly adjacent to our site. And so we will be making improvements for both the hotel site and the residential site. And as I said, the B Ocean is going to be making improvements at their portion of the site too. So both at the entrance. As you head further to the west, you're absolutely right. It is public right of way, and there's a lot of properties that have back out parking. So to go in and do any change to it, first of all, it would be outside our scope, but it is difficult for the city. I think our hope is or the city's hope potentially is as properties continue to see some sort of redevelopment or improvements to their properties, those additional enhancements can be made. We recognize that the property just to the west of ours looks like they're closing up and moving out, so maybe that'll be available. And I do know that the most severe drainage issues, as I understand, David, talking to your folks, is over at the southwest corner of,
Correct.
or I'm sorry, southwest corner of
southwest,
Harbor.
correct.
And there's not much we can do about that. It is a city infrastructure issue, but certainly we'll be improving it where we are.
Thank you, Robert, and thank you, Mr. Glassman. Do we have any other members of the public wishing to speak on items number 1 or 2? Tricia, Jerry?
No, we do not have anyone else that has signed up to speak or has their hand raised.
Okay, I'll bring it back to the board. All right, I don't have any hands raised. Does anyone wish to ask a question, or Jay?
I was just going to move to that we approve item 1.
Perfect. Mary, were you going to second?
Mary, you're on mute.
Second.
If I may ask about the motion.
Wanted to ask that question about the public participation, just to get it on the record, Robert. I know you included it in the backup.
Yeah, absolutely. So we had some individual meetings with the Harborage Association, with some individuals who wanted to meet with us. We also had a meeting with the Central Beach Alliance Board of Directors. We're not in their boundaries, but they're directly adjacent to us on the north. And then we also followed the city's requirements for a public participation meeting, which occurred on August 13th, when we sent out notices to every property owner and resident within 300 feet.
Thank you. And yes, I'm seconding. I will second Jay's motion. Sorry,
Okay.
Shari.
Sorry.
Okay, if I may ask about the motion, Jay, does it include all, is it for item 1, and does it include all of staff conditions?
Yes, inclusive of all staff conditions.
Okay, and is the basis for your motion the findings of fact in the staff report?
Compliance with the ULDR.
In compliance with the ULDR? Okay. May I read the title of the resolution?
Yes, please.
Okay. A resolution of the Planning and Zoning Board of the City of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, approving a site plan level 3 development permit for the development known as the Bahia Cabana Apartments, located at 3018 Harbor Drive, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, in the RMH 60 zoning district, for the development of 37 multifamily residential units, and approving yard modifications for the front, rear, and side yard setbacks.
Okay, so I would like to, before going to the vote, because we have a motion in a second, I'd just like to say that I note that, Robert, correct me if I'm wrong, both applications are requesting yard modifications?
The RMH 60 portion, which is the residential, is requesting yard modifications. The SPMHA is not, because the way that zoning district works, you're allowed to do the wedding cake.
Perfect. Then I would like to state that with regards to item 2, it is my longstanding habit to oppose applications with yard modifications. It looks beautiful. I love that the neighborhood accepts it, but I do believe that these yard modifications have a long-term impact on the city with regards to traffic, infrastructure, etc. So having said that, Bridget, are you ready to call the roll?
Yes, Madam Chair, I'm ready. Mr. Prewitt,
Yes.
Mr. Rotella,
Yes.
Mr. Bronco.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Schechtman,
Yes.
Ms. Scott,
Yes.
Mr. Cohen,
Yes.
Vice Chair Fertig,
Yes.
and Chair Moss.
No.
No? Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Moving to item number 2, PLN site 2004-0008. Is there a motion? Is there any discussion? I have no hands raised.
Move to approve.
Thank you, Jay. Is that with,
Move to approve with staff conditions based on compliance with the ULDR.
thank you, Jay. Is there a second? Jackie, was that a second? Could I have your unmute and yes?
Unmute and yes.
Thank you. All right, Bridget, are you ready to call the roll on item number 2?
Yes, I am. Mr. Rotella,
Yes.
Mr. Bronco, Mr. Bronco?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Scheckman?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Cohen?
Brad,
Yes, sorry. I muted it because my kid was talking.
Okay, and Vice Chair Mary Furtick?
Yes.
Mr. Prewitt?
Yes.
Chair Moss?
yes. Thank you, board. Thank you, Bridget, for items 1 and 2. Moving
Thank you
on.
very much.
Moving on now to item number 3, PLN REZ 2007-0002. I'd like to start by getting disclosures from the board, and I would like to start with Brad. Disclosures on item number 3.
Spoke with applicant's counsel.
Coleman?
I spoke with applicant's counsel, and I believe there was an email with a letter staff provided.
Bill?
Spoke with applicant's counsel as well as saw the letter that was provided.
Jackie? Jackie, unmute.
Sorry about that. Yes, I spoke to Gus Carbonell and I also spoke to Anthony, who was the gentleman that wrote us the letter.
Jay?
Site visit and received the letter from staff.
Michael, have you joined us? All right, Michael's not with us. Mary?
I visited the site. I spoke with Mr. Tilbrook and I received the letter.
John Bronco?
Spoke with Mr. Tilbrook.
Okay, thank you. And did I already do you, Brad? Sorry, Brad, did you already give me your disclosures?
First. Yes,
Thank
you did first.
And my disclosures are site visit, conversation with Mr. Tilbrook. So, Mr. Tilbrook, are you presenting for number 3?
Yes, I am. Thank you. Thank you, Chair Moss and members of the board. Thank you for your opportunity to participate this evening, and to the members of the public as well. I'd like to introduce our team, and we'll just do a relatively brief PowerPoint presentation that I'll bring up in a moment. My name is Stephen Tilbrook. I'm with Ackerman Law Firm in Fort Lauderdale. I have with me Benjamin Hedrick. Ben is also a land use attorney with Ackerman in our Miami office and Fort Lauderdale. Our applicant and owner is 745 North Andrews Avenue, which is a local investor group. And Ken Young is with us on behalf of 745 North Andrews Avenue. And of course, Gus Carbonell is the applicant's agent on the application and also the architect for the project and participating in this hearing as necessary as well. So thank you for that opportunity to introduce our team. I'm going to share my screen if I can do it properly. Here we go. All right, and let me do the PowerPoint. There we go. I hope you can see that. I'll just proceed with the presentation unless there's any questions already. So the application is for a proposed rezoning at 745 North Andrews Avenue. This is a 1.46 acre site. I don't know if you can see my cursor or not. Doesn't look like you can. It's bounded by Northwest A Street and Andrews Avenue. It has some retail and commercial and car uses right now. It is almost half of this block between 8th and 7th Street, bounded on the east by Andrews Avenue. It's bounded on the west by Northwest 1st Avenue. The request is for I'll show you some photos. This is the property along Andrews Avenue. And this is the view of the property along 1st Avenue on the west side. The request is to rezone the property from PUD, Planned Unit Development, is highlighted at this location, and to the Northwest Regional Activity Center Mixed Use East District, which is the district that is directly abutting to the south. So it is consistent with the other zoning in the area. This process includes 1 planning and zoning board hearing and 2 city commission meetings. The underlying land use for the property is Northwest Regional Activity Center, and the property proposed use is for a mixed-use multifamily development project consistent with what's been approved for other portions of this same block. To the abutting properties to the south is the same zoning, Northwest Regional Activity Center Mixed Use East. To the west is RMM 25. To the east is the Northwest Regional Activity Center MUNE, which is a very similar zoning district. And to the north is also the mixed use Northwest Regional Activity Center Mixed Use NE. Let's see. This is a map of the underlying land use. Project is located at this location. It's sort of in the light blue. I don't know if you can see my cursor or not, but it is Northwest Regional Activity Center underlying land use, so the proposed zoning is consistent. The former zoning, or the existing zoning, is a planned unit development project that was approved in July of 2004. That included rezoning from B2 and RMM 25 to the PUD. That project was a mixed-use residential project similar to this project. That occurred during the economic downturn, or right before the economic downturn. The resulting approval expired, and under the PUD ordinances, when the approval expires, the zoning goes away, the entitlements go away. So you have basically an unzoned parcel at this, with no entitlements and no ability to do anything at this location. So there's a need to rezone. There's a need to rezone to zoning that's consistent with the underlying land use, and the appropriate zoning is the Northwest Regional Activity Center Mixed Use East. The project that's planned is a similar mixed use project with commercial on the ground floor, around 141 residential units and 8,500 square feet of retail along Andrews Avenue and on 8th Street. The site plan has not yet been submitted for approval. Gus Carbonell and his team are still working on it, but we do have some renderings that we can show you. And there was some of the backup, some of that information, including the site plan, was in your backup materials as well. That project will likely be a site plan level 2, DRC level approval, since it meets all setbacks and density and in all other aspects of the code, as far as we know at this point in time. This is an example of the potential rezonings in the area. In collaboration with staff, we felt that the Northwest Regional Activity Center Mixed Use was the appropriate district. Rezoning criteria. So according to your code, section 4724.4.4D, there's 3 criteria that you consider. And all of this is in your backup, including the narratives that have been provided by the applicant in the staff report. There's an analysis of staff's recommendation as to these criteria as well. I'll just quickly go through them. The zoning, number 1, the zoning district proposed is consistent with the city's comprehensive plan. The proposed RAC, Northwest RAC zoning district is consistent with the Northwest RAC underlying land use. That's in the staff report. It also is consistent with objective 1.7 of the future land use element, which supports development and redevelopment activities in the Northwest Progressive Flagler Heights CRA that are consistent with the redevelopment plan. And this project is determined to be consistent with that redevelopment plan. Also, objective 1.21 of the future land use element, which encourages mixed use development in this area. So we believe we comply with criteria 1. Criteria number 2, bullet 2, is the changes anticipated by the proposed rezoning will not adversely impact the character of the development in or near the area under consideration. On this same block, within the last 2 years, the Planning and Zoning Board and the city staff have reviewed and approved another mixed-use project that is actually more dense in character than this particular project. That project included a rezoning of the north half of this block. I'm sorry, the south half of this block, and this proposed rezoning is for the north half of the block. So based upon that pattern of development that's already been approved and the sort of the pattern of redevelopment that's articulated in the redevelopment plan for the Progresso Flagler Heights CRA, this is consistent with the pattern for redevelopment for the area, and it also provides opportunity for revitalization and infill development as articulated in the staff report. The third criteria is that the character of the area proposed is suitable for the uses permitted in the proposed zoning district, is compatible with the surrounding districts and uses. This use, as articulated in the redevelopment plan, is compatible with the existing mix of uses along Los Andrews Avenue. It encourages mixed use and the commercial on the ground floor. The abutting properties to the south and the southeast also are mixed use east and include similar projects that have already been approved. According to your staff report, it is consistent with the character of the area. I'll just quickly go into public participation. We have this project is located in the Progresso Village Civic Association. We've been working with them for some time on both the site plan and the rezoning. And there was an initial informal meeting on May 18th with positive feedback on the site plan, the rezoning. We went back and we worked on the site plan and rezoning further. The formal public participation meeting was held on September 21st through web conference and follow-up participation at their monthly meeting. So there was 2 opportunities there. Notices were sent to all registered owners within 300 feet. At the meeting, there was no objections to the rezoning raised, and there was a formal letter of support from the neighborhood, and the applicant has pledged to continue to work with and have a dialogue with the neighborhood association or civic association as a project goes through the site plan approval process. This is the letter of support from the Progresso Village Civic Association. I don't know if you can see, but it's J.J. Hankerson is the president and forwarded this. And just to give you a preview, this is not a site plan approval before you today, but this is a preview of what's anticipated to be the character of the project that will go through the site plan approval process. The massing of the building is up on Andrews Avenue with commercial on the ground floor, townhouses, and then and all of this is creating a buffer for the parking garage, which is in the center of the project. This is the view from the west that shows the character of townhouses along First Avenue. It also provides a buffer or screening for the garage that's behind it. Rooftop pool deck with amenities, and then the apartments on that side, as well as apartments that facing 8th Street. And this is the character of the project along First Avenue with sort of a pedestrian scale townhouse appearance. This is not a site plan approval, but we wanted to give you the preview of what we're anticipating this zoning will enable the applicant to proceed with in due course. So that's the application, and it's before you for your consideration. We want to thank staff for working hard with us to bring this to you. Staff has a favorable recommendation in their staff report. The Neighborhood Association, Civic Association recommends approval, and we encourage you to recommend approval of this rezoning as well. We're here to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Tilbrook. I would like to get back to my screen. There we go. Okay, so I would like to ask the board if it is their desire to have the staff report by the city included as part of the record with regards to item number 3. Jackie, I see your hand raised. Is that an aye?
Yes, yes.
Okay, any,
Second.
second by Mary, any opposition to having the staff report included as part of the record on item number 3? I have no hands raised. I see no one waving at me from the video. So all in favor, aye.
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 Any opposed, wave at me or
Aye.
in the chat room. No hands. So the staff report is incorporated. Any questions for the applicant? Jackie?
Yeah, I've got a couple questions. Maybe this is for staff. I want to clarify that once this property, the PUD expired, is it accurate that Mr. Tilbrook said the property then had no zoning?
Good evening. This is Adam Schnell, case planner for the proposed rezoning. So currently the PUD has expired and currently nothing can be built on the property and it must be rezoned currently. If the property
It doesn't
is,
fall back to the original zoning.
it would not unless I believe the city commission granted that.
Okay. Okay, second question. Steve, could you put that slide back up of this parcel and the parcels around it? You made a comment that in that one block area, we rezoned the rest of the block. Show me what we rezoned, and is it the same zoning that you're seeking tonight?
Yes. Can you see my cursor?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is the site that we're seeking to have zoned today to the Northwest RAC MUE, and this is the rest of the block right here that is currently zoned Northwest Regional Activity Center MUE, the same proposed zoning.
Okay.
So when you say block, you're actually talking about other blocks.
This is actually the same block. It is bounded by 7th and 8th. There is not a street in between. These are abutting parcels.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so originally that was the MUNE until they did the PUD, I guess. Okay.
Before the PUD, it was not yet zoned to the Regional Activity Center. It was B2 and RMM 25, our site.
Is there other parcels around there that are, I got that letter from Anthony and I spoke to him, and his big concern was spot zoning and why the city, doesn't change all the zoning. So maybe staff can address that.
I spoke with Anthony as well, and I know Anthony for some time. He's an advocate for redevelopment in this area. His plan is that all of this should be up to 7th Avenue East, should all be zoned Northwest Regional Activity Center mixed use east. And he's pushing for the city to have that larger rezoning in order to clean this up and make it consistent with the underlying land use. Ours is not spot zoning. Ours is, I would call it incremental zoning to make it consistent with the underlying land use and consistent with the adjacent uses. When I spoke with Anthony, he had no opposition to this application. He just wants a larger rezoning, and he's encouraging the city to, on its own, pursue that larger rezoning of this area all the way to 7th Avenue.
I have a question, Steve. While you have this map up, would you, so if I start up at Northwest 9th Street and I come down the RMM, the east side boundary of the, exactly. Now, did the RMM 25 zoning extend down, it extended down down south into it halved the PUD block, is that correct?
Yes.
And on one side it was RMM 25 and on the other side it was NWRAC?
Are you asking about our site or the adjacent site?
No, I'm asking about your site, the little PUD in there.
So before it was PUD, I believe half of the site was RMM 25, the west half, and the eastern half was B2.
Okay, so you're doing great following me. Do you see the western boundaries of your PUD box?
Yes.
Okay, if you would extend that line north, can you tell me what the underlying land use is of those lots?
All of this is Regional Activity Center, Northwest Regional Activity Center. I'll show you the next slide, which is the underlying land use.
So
this is the land use map.
Okay.
Our location is here. This light blue is the Northwest Regional Activity Center. This is all Northwest Regional Activity Center.
Okay.
This is the, oh shoot. This is the Downtown Regional Activity Center. This is the Northwest. So Mr. Anthony's plan would be to make this area all the Northwest RAC zoning consistent with this land use.
Okay.
I'm not trying to complicate this, but I wanted to answer Jackie's question.
No, I appreciate it. I have another question. Mary Fertig.
Oh, thank you. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
I just wanted to comment, and I spoke with Steve after I received the communication, and just say that I know we've had this request before for the consistency. I don't know that it pertains tonight, but I think it's a conversation for us to have with staff as to whether or not, you know, this is something that's appropriate to do in this area. So I know it's been raised on other properties over the years, and I think that's just a conversation for us to have about what the future of it is. So anyways, I just wanted to interject that, and thank you, Catherine.
Thank you, Mary. Let's see if we have any members of the public wishing to speak on this item. Trish and Jerry, do we have any members of the public?
Chair, we do not signed up to speak on this item, and no one has their hand raised from the public except Jackie.
Thank you, Tricia.
Jackie, you ready?
Yeah, yes. I'd like to ask staff if the plan is to make this whole area the same zoning as what Mr. Tilbrook is trying to do in this one little spot.
Good evening, Adam Schnell. To the best of my knowledge, we're not planning on rezoning the whole swaths of land surrounding this area, but I believe we can have a further discussion offline after this meeting if the Planning and Zoning Board wishes to have that discussion.
So there's no plan to change this zoning other than this little old PUD that we're dealing with this evening.
Good evening. This is Ella Parker. I'm sorry, Adam, if I could interject real quick. Ella Parker, Urban Design and Planning Manager. Hello, Board. Yes, we have discussed this in the past. And as we mentioned at that during that time period, we haven't received specific direction from the city manager or the city commission to do an effort of rezoning the entirety of the area. As you can see on the map, a big portion of that site is still zoned residential. So at the time that the rezoning to the Northwest RAC, MUE, MUWs, et cetera, happened, there was not a full consensus with all the property owners in those areas to do the full-blown rezoning. You know, as things change and we get the directive to do so, we can certainly undertake that effort at a future time. But in reviewing this particular zoning that's in front of you, we did look at the fact that it is not a spot rezoning. It does comply with the criteria, and that's what we had reviewed it under. Thank you.
Thank you, Ella. And that reminds me that I heinously failed to introduce everyone on the city side who is making this meeting possible. So I would like to start with Ella Parker, who is the head of the Planning and Zoning Department. And I know it's a different name, but Ella, thank you for joining us. And would you please introduce your staff members that are with us tonight?
Yes, absolutely. With us tonight, we've got, or had, I should say, Jim Hetzel, Yvonne Redding. We have Adam Schnell, Carland Grant, Trisha Logan, who's been assisting also on the public speaker side. From Public Works, we have Igor Vasiliev, and from Transportation and Mobility, we have Benjamin Restrepo. Thank you.
I would also like to say that joining us tonight is Assistant City Attorney Shari Wallen. Shari, are you still with us? Well, I know she is.
Yeah.
Hi, Shari. And we also have Bridget Chiappetta, who is our official court reporter tonight. Thank you, Bridget. All right, so I did not mean to interrupt, but I don't have any hands up. Do we have any other questions? Oh, yep, Mary.
I was gonna move to approve.
Okay, with staff recommendations?
Yes, yes.
Is there a second?
I'll second it, Catherine.
Oh, okay.
Second by Coleman.
Coleman beat me to it.
Second by Coleman. Brad, does your son have any comments to make?
Jackson, do you have any comments on this?
Never mind, I was kidding.
No, he doesn't have any comments.
Thank you. Any discussion on the motion? I only see Mary's hand raised because
yeah, okay.
I see no discussion. So Bridget, we are ready to call the roll.
And so am I. Mr. Bronco.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Scheckman.
Yes.
Ms. Scott.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Cohen.
Yes, and I'm hoping that their design changes when they put this back in instead of a big box. But yes, on the rezoning.
Vice Chair Mary Furtick.
Yes.
Mr. Prewitt.
Yes.
Mr. Rotella.
Yes.
Chair Moss.
No. Motion carries. All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Moving on to items 4 and 5, which are related. I'd like to ask the board if it is your desire to hear 4 and 5 together and take votes separately. Feedback?
Yes.
Yes.
By Brad, yes by Bill. Okay, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
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 Any opposed, raise your hand or shout. Is that? Okay, I see no one in opposition. So we are going to hear items 4 and 5 together and vote separately. I'd like to get disclosures first on item 4, starting with Coleman.
I have none.
Okay, Bill,
I have none.
Jackie,
None.
Jay.
Site visit.
Is Michael with us? Mary?
Site visit.
John?
None.
Brad?
None.
And I have none. All right, with regards to item number 5, same thing, disclosures, starting with Bill,
None.
Jackie,
None.
Jay,
Site visit.
Michael, not here, Mary,
Site visit.
John,
None.
Brad,
None.
Coleman,
None.
and I have none. So is it Ms. Gray?
Yes, Dina
Hi.
Gray.
You are up on 4 and 5, but we're going to vote separately, okay?
Okay. May I proceed?
Yes, please.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Dina Gray. I'm Land Use Counsel with Corinne Spoon-Martyr, and I am joined here tonight with Eric Metz, he's owner representative, and also Mike Gay with Suntech Engineering. And if Jerry could please bring up my PowerPoint presentation. Thank you. The applicant, U.S. Crane and Rigging and Urban Precast, this is for a rezoning and plat. And Jerry, if you could go to the next slide. Just wanted to give you a very brief background regarding U.S. Crane Rigging and Urban Precast. They are a very successful business that is a New York-based company out of New York, and they have over 400 employees there. And they are looking to expand into Southeast Florida, into Fort Lauderdale and Dania Beach. The overall property, which you'll see later, encompasses both the overall site. The project site encompasses both Fort Lauderdale and Dania Beach. This is a family-owned business with over 20 years of experience in precast operations and crane and rigging. Urban Precast is a large-scale producer of precast concrete products, and they have a 375,000 square foot production facility in Kingston, New York. And they are vertically integrated or co-located, same owner with U.S. Crane and Rigging, which is one of the largest, if not the largest, crane operator in New York City. As you can see from the PowerPoint, there's examples or photographs of their cranes with the skyscrapers in New York City. They provide warehousing, high-rise crane and rigging operations, and large regional precast operations. And if, Jerry, if you can go to the next slide for me. So this slide here gives you an overall view of the project site, which you could see in the center of the slide highlighted in blue. And to the north is State Road 84. To the east is I-95. To the west, you see the Turnpike, and then I-595 running along to the north and west. So you can see where it's labeled. And to the south is Southwest 30th Avenue and Griffin Road. Jerry, if you could go to the next slide. So now this slide gives you, a nice aerial view of the property. It's a view to the east. The property is vacant and it's unplatted. It is approximately 8.48 acres, and it's currently zoned county manufacturing industrial. It's intense manufacturing industrial, which is M3 at county zoning. And then there's a small sliver of property that's also included here in the Fort Lauderdale piece that is M3 and City B3. And it's a small sliver, which you could see better on a slide that I'm going to show you further down. And Jerry, if you can go to the next slide. So here you have a view north, and of course that's the subject site that is highlighted in blue. And to the south of that is also part of the overall project site, and that is Dania Beach. Dania Beach is zoned IG, so we won't be requesting a rezoning on the Dania Beach portion. And the Dania Beach portion of the property, recently we received site plan approval for a warehouse building on that portion of the site. So Jerry, if you could go to the next slide. So now here's the zoning map, which is in your backup materials. And the subject property is hatched with the black lines. And as you could see, the major portion of the property that's county zoning M3, their intense manufacturing and industrial zoning district. And then the little hatch just above north of I-595, you'll see it's also a continuation of the M3. And then there's a tiny little portion that little portion is B3, and that's city. So the intention is to rezone the property so that it is all city industrial zoning. So now I also want to point out, so the zoning that you see B3, that's encompassed in the City of Fort Lauderdale, and also B2, that's the City of Fort Lauderdale. The property to the east of the B3 portion, that is Dania Beach, which is industrial. It's IROMAA, the Industrial Research Office and Marine Airport Approach District. So that's all industrial there. And then also the property we're hatched out where the M3 and the B3 portion is the city of Hollywood, and that's their C4 zoning district, which is their high intensity commercial district. So Jerry, you could go to the next slide, please. So here, this gives you a good view of the blue portions, which are in Fort Lauderdale. It's the Fort Lauderdale piece for the rezoning, and then to the south is Dania Beach. And this Dania Beach portion is IG, as I mentioned before, and that we had recently received site plan approval for that portion of the property. So we're requesting tonight to rezone the Fort Lauderdale portion from the county zoning industrial district to the city's industrial zoning district. And we meet the criteria of the code, and that the rezoning meets the criteria that it's consistent with the comprehensive plan. The underlying land use designation is industrial, and the proposed rezoning meets the goals and objectives and policies in the future land use element, goal 1, objective 1.31 of the industrial land use category, and that the industrial land use designation encourages activities with land areas that are predominantly connected with manufacturing, assembly, process, and storage of products, and that this would make it consistent with the zoning and our rezoning request and with the proposed industrial uses for the property. Now, our second request is to plat the property. This is unplatted, and the plat note is we're requesting is restricted to 154,000 square feet of industrial use. That includes 174 dry boat slips on parcels A and B. And on parcel C is 154 square feet of industrial use on parcel C. And Jerry, if you could go to the next slide. Okay, this slide, this is the proposed plat. So what you're looking at is parcels A to the north of 595 and parcel B on the south side of 595. What you're not seeing is parcel C, which is in Dania Beach. So these, this is a general overview of our rezoning request and plat, and we are here with our team to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Gray. While it is not before us, I am curious as to what you plan on doing on these parcels. If you don't mind sharing that with us.
Oh, no problem. So we had submitted a site plan for dry dock storage for the 174 units and started the process with the county. And right now, the developer is the contract purchaser of the property, so we're under a due diligence period, and we ran into some environmental items and some bumps along the way with the county that we think will take an extensive amount of time to work through. So at this point, the concept or the idea is to utilize the property for its fleet parking, its cranes and the vehicle fleet parking, which is under the permitted uses for industrial.
Okay, terrific. Thank you so much. Is it the staff's recommendation that we include the staff report? Is it the board's recommendation that we include the staff reports for items number 4 and 5 in the record?
So moved.
Thank you, Mary. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by
Bill.
Thank you, Bill. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, raise your hand or shout at me. I see no opposition. So the staff reports will be included with regards to items number 4 and 5 in the record. John, did you have your hand up?
Yes, and I apologize for the delay. I've got a weird connection where I'm at right now, but I had a question. I saw the plat up there, and I know that those 3 lakes over on that side are the outfall lakes for FP&L. Has FP&L been involved in the site plan? And is the canal still being retained in the plat?
Yes, and we've had an extensive amount of conversation with FP&L, and if Eric Metz is online, he's owner's rep. He's had those significant conversation with them, and I'll let him speak to that. If he's
Eric, are
able
you
to.
with us?
Sherry, I think you'll have to move him from the attendee list.
Or Mike. There has been extensive conversation that I know that Eric has had able to get on.
I moved Eric over and then he dropped off. I'm not sure if he's having technical issues.
Thank you, Jerry. So as I understand it, if we were to approve the rezoning and the plat review, this, your intended uses still face a fair amount of review on the county and the city level. Is that correct?
We are still going through, yes, as far as the site plan, we will need to resubmit a new site plan. And we're still at near the beginning stages as far as that's concerned in processing the application through DRC.
Right. And John, I had the same question as you. Given the location of this application, this property, it appears there would be environmental implications. So John, back to you. Do you have any further questions for the applicant? John, are you with us, John?
And Eric Mack is rejoined too. I think he texted me that saying he got kicked out, but he's back on.
Eric, are you with us?
Or it looked like he's trying to get back on.
All right, well, please, Ms. Gray, please let me know if he gets back and we'll hear from him. Jay.
Yeah, other than environmental, I was also thinking, with cranes, you're right by the airport. Are you also like speaking with the airport and the FAA?
Yeah. Yes.
Hey, Dina, this is Eric Metz. My Zoom thing died there. I apologize. Someone let know folks that I am back.
All right, Eric. Well, Jay, we'll get back to you. Eric, why don't you go ahead? Are you able to respond to Ms. Gray's direction?
My Zoom it blinked out there, so I apologize. I don't know the question there.
Why don't you remind or tell Eric what it is he's going to respond to?
Eric, there's a question regarding communication with FP&L.
Okay.
And I've had significant conversation with them, so I believe you would be best to respond to questions regarding FP&L.
Yes, absolutely. So again, Eric Metz, owner's rep. We've been in conversation with FPL over their access through the property and also under 595. We've designed the sites so for the Dania Beach portion of it and also in Fort Lauderdale, so they'll have access through the site, and they're comfortable with that. I heard a question over the FPL canal, and that is also part of the overall plat. It is technically part of an easement that's on the property, but they have an uninterrupted access to that for drainage, which is all part of the environmental permitting process and part of the due course of the overall approvals. So the answer is yes. It's been a lot of conversation, and I think we will have more with them as we move through the actual development, again, long term of the property to situate all the materials and what they have to do there. And I did hear a question also on FAA, and we have also submitted our FAA applications for the site on the Dania Beach side, which have been approved. And there's also substantial FPL high tension lines that run north to south on the site that will be substantially higher than both the crane operations and anything that would happen there. They're very high.
Terrific. Jackie.
Yeah, staff could probably answer this. When they actually develop this site, Is this going to come back to this board, or we're only doing the plat?
Hi, good evening, everyone. Carla-Ann Grant with Urban Design and Planning. It depends on what they are proposing. If the use is requiring a site plan level 3 or conditional use approval, then it will come back to Planning and Zoning Board. But if the proposed use would meet the threshold for a site plan level 2, then it would just be a DRC staff level review.
Okay, so we don't know. Okay.
All right, John. Hi, John.
Yeah, so Shari, as a waterfront property being considered, doesn't that come to Planning and Zoning Board by default?
Shari?
Well, this is Carla-Ann. I can answer that. Yes, it would. If it is, it will be considered a waterway use. Therefore, it would come back to PZ.
Thank you, Carla-Ann.
That's my concern, the environmental impact on the waterway. So
All right.
I'm glad that'll come back to us.
Okay. Do we have any other questions? I don't see any hands raised in the participants list. I'm sorry, did I do the public hearing? I did not. All right, so at this time, I'd like to ask if there are any members of the public wishing to speak on items 4 or 5. That would be PLN Plat 2006-0001, number 4, or item number 5, PLN REZ 2005-0001. Tricia and Jerry, do we have any members of the public wishing to speak on these items?
Chair, we don't have anyone that signed up to speak on these items, and no one has their hand raised.
Thank you, Tricia. Shari, do you have any comments to add? I saw your box light up there. Okay, so
no, I don't. Sorry.
Thank you, Mary.
I just wanted to, Carla-Ann, I just wanted to discuss the, isn't this right on Marina Mile? We're talking about waterway uses. And this is dry dock storage if they came, but that's really not what's before us. What's before us is the rezoning issue, correct?
That is correct. Just the plat and the rezoning. Site plan was submitted to have a dry stock storage of, I believe, 174 dock slips, but they are not moving forward, or at least at this point, with that site plan. So this would just be the rezoning and the plat to be considered tonight.
And the rezoning is from county to city. I mean, a similar use from county to city.
Yes, the main objective is to unify the property. Right now, it has the county zoning district as well as a B3 city zoning district. So they are incorporating and unifying the entire site to be just industrial.
Okay, so I'm going to move to approve.
Thank you, Mary. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Jackie. And is that with
yes,
staff recommendations?
Yes.
Just to be clear, this is the rezoning.
This
item
is the
5,
rezoning.
correct?
Yes.
That would be item number. Okay, to make this simple, Mary, would you mind starting with the plat, item number 4?
Yes, I move to approve the plat.
And I second.
All right, we have a motion and a second on item number 4, PLN Plat 2006-0001. Any discussion on the motion? I have no hands raised in my participants box. So, Bridget, we're ready.
Okay. Mr. Schechtman,
Yes.
Ms. Scott,
Yes.
Mr. Cohen,
Yes.
thank you. Vice Chair Fertig,
Yes.
Mr. Prewitt,
Yes.
Mr. Rotella,
Yes.
Mr. Bronco,
Yes.
Chair Moss.
Yes, item number 4 carries unanimously. Moving to item number 5, PLN REZ 2005-0001. Mary, your hand is raised.
I move to approve
Thank you.
the rezoning. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I will second.
Second by Brad. Is there any discussion on the motion? I have no hands raised in my participants box. So Bridget, we're ready to vote.
Okay, Ms. Scott,
Yes.
Mr. Cohen,
Yes.
Vice Chair Fertig,
Yes.
Mr. Prewitt,
Yes.
Mr. Rotella,
Yes.
Mr. Bronco.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Scheckman,
Yes.
Chair Moss.
Yes, item carries unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Gray and
Thank
team.
you. very much. Thank you.
Moving to item number 6, PLN ULDR 2001-0001. No disclosures are required. Who is our presenter?
That would be me. It's Trisha Logan.
Hi, Trisha.
Give me just a moment to bring up the presentation. All right. Good evening, board members and chair. I'm Trisha Logan, the Historic Preservation Planner in the Urban Design and Planning Division. And I'll start my video as well. I will be providing you an overview of the proposed Transfer of Development Rights program this evening, often called a TDR program. But I wanted to start with giving you a little bit of background of what has been going on with the Historic Preservation Program, which you are very well aware of because all of these amendments have come before you. But in 2018, the City Commission asked for recommendations regarding potential amendments to the city's Historic Preservation Ordinance. And following the conference meeting where this was requested, staff outlined a 3-phased approach to amending the ordinance and identifying potential incentives to enhance the program. As part of phase 1, staff focused on key amendments to the ULDR that streamline the historic application review and approval process. And as part of phase 2, staff developed several recommendations to the historic preservation incentives. And so far, we've adopted several incentives, including parking reductions and exemptions, a setback waiver, as well as a tax exemption for commercial properties. So now we're proposing the TDR program. And a TDR program would allow for the transfer of excess development rights, either square footage or density from a designated historic resource to a proposed new development site. And a designated historic resource would act as what's referred to as the sending site, and a proposed new development site would act as the receiving site to allow for additional height through the transfer of floor area or additional units. So in this presentation, I'll review what acts as the sending area or site, the certificate of eligibility process and the calculations that go along with that, what acts as a receiving area or site, and then ultimately the certificate of transfer process. So for a sending area, any property that is a locally designated historic landmark or landmark site or archaeological site would qualify, as well as any contributing property that are located in a locally designated historic district. And here is a map for your reference of those properties that would qualify or partially qualify today. So this map shows all of the locally designated historic landmarks and landmark sites. And it also shows the historic districts. At this time, we don't have assignment of contributing or non-contributing statuses in our historic districts, but at this moment, we do have a proposal for that assignment specifically in the Sailboat Bend Historic District, although that has not been officially adopted at this time. So the first step in the process for TDR is the certificate of eligibility. And this step would verify that the property is actually located in a designated sending area, meaning that it is one of those locally designated historic resources. And this step will also verify calculations for what's available for density, or floor area available to transfer. So in the next two slides, I'm going to provide a little bit more detail about what those calculations are. So the first one is calculation of available density for residential units. This will be the calculation of the maximum residential units permitted on the sending site, subtracted by the number of existing residential units on the sending site. And total available density is based upon the gross acreage of the entire site, and the available density will be rounded down to the nearest whole number. The conversion of existing hotel units to residential units for the purposes of density for the TDR calculation would be a little bit different, and this would be the difference between the number of permitted residential units divided by the number of permitted hotel units as specified in the ULDR for each of the zoning districts that are acting as sending sites. And then this number will be multiplied by the difference between the number of permitted hotel units and the number of existing hotel units. For zoning districts in the Central Beach Regional Activity Center, some of them don't have a maximum density. So the maximum density as per our regulations would be capped at 48 residential units per acre and 90 hotel units per acre. And then in certain circumstances, we also have some landmarks or landmark sites that have only been partially designated. And in those cases, only the portion of the property that has been designated would be able to be included in the calculation of floor area or density that may be transferred to a receiving site. So the other calculation is for available floor area, and available floor area will subtract the existing gross floor area from the permitted gross floor area at the sending site per the ULDR. And these calculations will be verified through the submittal of calculations by the applicant of calculations and existing signed and sealed floor plans, which will need to incorporate setbacks, FAR, and all of the requirements in the ULDR. So moving on to show the receiving areas, and these would be new development sites. So for density, there are two primary areas that act as receiving areas for density. These include specific zoning districts within the Uptown Urban Village and any lot of land that's located in the Unified Flex Zone. There is a limitation to the number of density that can be, number of units that can be transferred under this, with a maximum of 10 units per acre and a minimum unit size of 400 square feet. And even though any lot of land that is located within the Unified Flex Zone is eligible, a receiving area may not be located on the barrier island or within an adopted adaptation action area. And all receiving areas must also comply with any applicable height requirements per the FAA. And just to give you a visual, here are the maps of what the receiving areas would be for density. So within the Uptown Urban Village, there are 3 zoning districts that are eligible receiving areas. And then, of course, the Unified Flex Zone map is shown on the right. And for receiving areas for floor area, there are 13 zoning districts that act as receiving areas. Each area allows for the use of floor area to be incorporated into a new development as additional height. And in the Regional Activity Center zoning districts, the allowance for additional height corresponds to a smaller percentage of the additional height that is permissible through an application for a conditional use permit or specific performance standards. And I'll show another slide that kind of gives a comparison in just a couple of moments. And incorporation of the development rights, either density or floor area, into a receiving site is still subject to review through the Development Review Committee process. So the next slide shows all of the zoning districts that are eligible throughout the city. And then here is a slide just showing the Uptown Urban Village areas that are also eligible. And like I mentioned, here's the slide showing a comparison between what is the maximum height allowable and the additional height that's allowable using the TDR, as well as the maximum height that you may be able to use with a conditional use. So that it's not combinable. You can't add additional height using the TDR. It would just be using the TDR or the conditional use process. And then finally, the last step in the process is the certificate of transfer. And this is the application between the sending site and the receiving site to officially transfer the excess development rights from the historic resource to the new development. And as part of the application process, there are a number of items that are required as part of the submittal from each property owner. And specifically for the historic resource, there's a restrictive covenant, an existing conditions report, and maintenance plan, which are required. And all of these items would ultimately be required to be recorded following 30 days of the approval. And just as an additional reference, this slide shows a few other TDR programs that are in South Florida Georgia too. But these examples are taken from a report that was put together by Miami-Dade County, and it just shows if a program worked and why or why not it didn't work, and the issues that they encountered. So that is the conclusion of my presentation, and I can answer any questions you may have.
Tricia, I'm going to start out in my role as chair. Does this process come to a public hearing at any point?
So it depends on the actual development. The assignment of TDR wouldn't come before Planning and Zoning Board, but if a project that's applying TDR has that level of site plan review, then it would need to go before Planning and Zoning Board like any other new development.
Am I correct in saying that the sending property could attribute units to a receiving property that would allow it to exceed the number of units permitted by the code?
Yes, it would allow for that.
And what is the public's opportunity to weigh in on that?
So this would be, that would be part of a site plan review process where the TDRs would be proposed for incorporation. And the applicant could apply to the site plan level review process in advance of purchasing the TDRs.
But
yes, and Madam Chair, if I could intervene, this is Shari. With the certificate of transfer process, there is a DRC meeting, so the public can attend that as well with the certificate of transfer.
But the ultimate decision is left to DRC, not the public. I mean, my recollection of the last DRC meeting I went to, it's not really a public hearing. It's a staff meeting where public is allowed to attend and comment, but it's not a public hearing. It's not publicized, it's not televised. Am I right?
That's correct. They can attend and make comments, but I just wanted you to know that there was an opportunity for the public to attend that meeting.
I appreciate that. Is there, am I correct, Tricia, that the transfer of these rights to a receiving property is not dependent, is not limited by the existing zoning?
So there is a limitation of what can be transferred. So there's a limitation of 10 units per acre on top of the existing zoning in the specified areas that can receive the density.
So a transfer could be for units more than the zoning category calls for.
Correct. In the specified areas.
Okay. And with regards to the specified areas, we have, could we see that slide that showed the map of the receiving areas?
Sure. Give me just 1 minute. Bring it back up.
See,
I'll get to you, Jackie.
yeah, it's okay.
Okay, so this is the map showing the receiving areas for density.
On the right-hand side, it appears to be the entire city.
No, so it's the unified flex zone, which is the area that's shaded in brown, but there's also a number, there's a number of requirements that go along with being in a unified flex zone. And a couple of those are, you can't be in an adaptation action area, which that map can change from time to time. And you can't be in an area that has limitations through the FAA.
So Tricia, what would trigger a site plan approval 3 or 4 in this process?
I might ask for my zoning or my.
This is Shari. So this is a completely separate process. The site plan would come after. So basically at the end of the ordinance, we have a provision that says that you must comply with the regular ULDR provisions that may require you to go through a site plan. So while this is giving you those development rights, it is not approving a site plan. There has to be a separate application for a site plan.
So Shari, the application, the transfer would proceed according to these regulations, but site plan approval of anything that happened would pursue under normal ULDR regulations?
Yes, that's correct. So at the end of the ordinance, the last provision that we have is the purchase of a TDR does not guarantee a use or a development permit. Uses and development permits are subject to all other applicable development regulations in the ULDR. So that's the last provision that we have in the ordinance. So this does not waive the requirement for a site plan.
And this transfer process does not include any built-in presumptions?
No, it does not guarantee the use.
Okay, terrific.
Jackie? So this is, let me make sure I understand this. Is this designed to encourage historic preservation?
Yes.
Yep. Okay, so if I have a property that I'm going to restore and I'm going to transfer I can send my development rights to another property that I own?
If your property is
I'm a little confused on this. I need to understand it better. Maybe it's just me.
Yeah.
Could you give me an example?
If I could just interject, this is Shari. So this is not numbered, but it's section C in the ordinance. It lists the designated sending areas. So the property has to be located within those sending areas in order for it to send those development rights to a receiving site. And so the sending areas are as follows: lots or buildings designated as historic landmarks by the city, lots designated as historic landmark sites by the city, lots designated as archaeological sites, lots or buildings deemed by the Historic Preservation Board as contributing properties located within a historic district in accordance with 472411B. So the property has to be located in those areas and actually be designated and either be located in a historic district, but it has to be a contributing property in order for it to send those development rights to a receiving site.
Okay, so the rights just stay within historic properties theoretically.
They're there, they're unused at that time. And so the idea is that if they're not going to develop their property anyway, then it's an opportunity to sell those development rights to another property that will utilize those development rights.
But
Because
the
some
other
historic
property,
properties-
Sherry, the other property, can it be any big project? Or the other property has to be located in a historic district or contributing
No,
property?
You're asking about the receiving site where
Correct.
where that is? Okay. So the receiving site in the ordinance, it has to be meet the following criteria. It has to be in a receiving area. So we separate them as far as the type of rights that they can receive. So for density, the dwelling units, it has to be located in the uptown urban village, or it has to be any lot or land located within the unified flex zone. That's for density only. And then for non-residential floor area, in order to get those sites, then we have a list of different, I think Trish is putting it up on the screen. So we have the RAC UV, RAC RPO, and all those other ones, CB, B1, B2, B3. But then we also have criteria that you must meet in order to become a receiving site. So Broward County has requirements for us that it can't be on the barrier island. We also put a regulation in there for the height requirements for FAA. And we just have a lot of other requirements that Broward County requires that they have to meet. But again, I just want to emphasize that this is not a site plan. That's a separate process that they must meet.
Jackie, are you good for the moment?
I missed the majority of it because my computer, I'm good for the moment. I had a bad connection.
Okay, I'm going to go to Ella, who wants to chime in.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to help Trish out with the answer when you asked about the type of projects and site plan reviews. I wanted to make sure everyone understood that, keeping in mind the unified flex zone is mostly, the underlying land use is mostly commercial. It's along the major corridors, and also it's regional activity center. So it includes the downtown, the South Regional Activity Center, the Northwest. And as you see, there's a separate map for the uptown area where that's also recognized as a specific receiving area. So in order to bring forth residential units on most of these sites, you're going to actually be required to go through a mixed use development through Flex, and that does require Planning and Zoning Board site plan level 3 review. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you, Ella. Coleman.
Ella, I think you may have partially answered my question. So with respect to the transfer of density, we talk about the transfer to uptown or to any of the unified flex zones. In the unified flex zones, are there any single family zoned districts? I mean, I would not want to change the nature of a single family neighborhood by adding by increasing the density there, so you could build 2 homes on a lot, for example.
Right. So yeah, absolutely. There are no, the unified flex zone, again, by its very nature, because you're flexing in residential, is mostly commercial corridors and the regional activity centers. So this does not include any of our residential neighborhoods you see in the brown.
Could that map be expanded? It's difficult to tell what areas that map covers because there's no streets or.
So this map is actually on our city's GIS map as a layer where you can zoom in and out and look at different properties, and it's interactive. I can bring that map up for you at this time, but it is something that any property owner would be able to look up their address to see if they're within the unified flex zone or not.
Tricia, I, for one, would like to see an expanded version of that map if possible. And if you need a second, I can go to another question.
Yep, just give me just one moment and move on.
I'm sorry, this is Carlan. I actually have it up. So if Tricia, if you don't mind, I would share that.
Okay.
And then I can go ahead and zoom in. Perfect.
Thanks, Carl-Ann.
Okay, can you all see the map?
Yes, it's tinier than
Yeah,
before.
it's about a size 2 font.
It's trying to load. Give me 1 second.
Sure.
Okay, are you able to see it a little better?
Yes.
Well-
Could you scroll up?
Okay. So just tell me exactly where you would like me to scroll up. So everything in the pink, I only have the layer for the flex, unified flex zone.
Right, exactly. Could you move it up a little bit?
Sure.
Perfect, perfect. So not to hijack your comments, Coleman and Jackie, but at the end of the day, I understand, and please correct me, but I understand that if a transfer of rights were to occur in these pink areas that exceeded, well, strike that. If a transfer of rights were to occur in this area to a project of site plan level 3 or 4, a public hearing would be required. Is that correct?
Not for the transfer itself, but for the project.
Okay. Okay. And once the transfer occurred, as I recall someone saying, apologies, that it comes with no presumptions of approval or guarantees.
That's correct.
That's correct. That's correct, Madam Chair. This is Shari. So yes, at the last provision that we have in the ordinance, it states that it doesn't guarantee a use or a development permit. So it would have to go under the regular process for a site plan. So if that requires the P&Z to review that, then that will require that. But I cannot say at this point. But as far as the transfer is concerned, within this process, we have DSD reviewing it, and then it goes to DRC, and then that's it. We don't have the Planning and Zoning Board involved in the TDR program itself.
Okay, thank you.
Unless there is an appeal for the denial of the request for a certificate of transfer, then the Planning and Zoning Board would review that at that point.
Okay, thank you, Shari. Coleman, what else do you have?
I probably should have taken down my hand, but I'm looking at the map, and I obviously we're talking about the racks, and we've got the northwest rack is a large part of the pink area there in the middle of the screen now, and there are lots of single family neighborhoods in there. They may have a northwest rack zoning designation, but I mean, again, I mean, just the same concern I expressed a minute ago is I would hate to see us unintentionally change the nature of some of the single family neighborhoods in a large part of that area and a large part of the pink area here.
Coleman, as I understand it, if anything were to happen in that pink area that occurred on a level of a site plan 3 or 4, it would come to us. If it occurred on a site on a property where the application only met site plan level 1 or 2, it wouldn't come to us. And that today is how any application would come to us. Ella, Shari, Carl-Ann, Tricia, was that accurate?
Okay.
Can you hear me? This is
Go ahead, Shari. Sorry.
Okay, sorry. Okay, so that would be, yes, it would go before you for a site plan review, not for the transfer of development rights. However, I did want to just mention to the board that in the ordinance, we also have a section that in F4 that states that the floor area, density, and FAR of the receiving site shall not exceed that allowed by the City of Fort Lauderdale comprehensive plan for the applicable land use category. So it can't exceed what's in the comp plan. So just so everyone is aware of that.
Do we not have areas where the zoning density is less than the comp plan density?
We do.
Our zoning is generally consistent with the land use, but there are areas, you're correct, that provide, for example, RMH 60 zoning district has a density of 60 units to the acre, but you might see a lot of developments that maybe aren't quite at that 60 units. So that's just the nature of the mix of development and uses.
Okay. Jay, your hand is up.
Thank you. I have a few questions. First, is this for an ongoing basis, like future designated properties, or does this also to apply to already designated properties, such as the two that you gave us as an example earlier?
It applies to already designated properties and properties that would be designated in the future.
Okay, so just as an example, the whole Sailboat Bend neighborhood is historic, and I think there are parts of that area which are in the regional activity center, or in this right over here. So anybody who is in that area will now have transferable development rights that they can sell. Everybody who lives there.
No, as of right now, the Sailboat Bend Historic District does not have a differentiation between contributing and non-contributing properties. This ordinance only allows for properties that are identified as contributing to participate in the program. We do have a couple of individually designated properties within the boundary of the Sailboat Bend Historic District, so they would be eligible under the current language. But as I mentioned in the presentation, there is a current proposal to address that within the neighborhood to make those assignments, but it hasn't been adopted yet and hasn't gone through the process to be adopted.
Okay, so let's use this other property as an example. You showed two properties. One of them was on Brickell Avenue by where Wharf is, and the other one is the fire, the old historic fire department, the Tobler Law Office. That is located in RAC CC, and it's already designated historic. So that property owner whose property is already designated historic is now going to be able to have transferable development rights for a high rise, essentially, that they can sell once we effectuate this.
So it would have to be calculated for each individual property as far as what they're eligible for. And that's the purpose of the first step in the application process, which is the certificate of eligibility. And the applicant will have to submit a certain items depending on what they want to qualify for, either to transfer density or floor area or both. But there are application requirements for both types of applications. And then once they submit those materials, then those would be reviewed and a certificate of eligibility would be issued showing what they can actually transfer. But yes, fundamentally, they're eligible to off those development rights.
Okay. You know, you have put a lot more thought into this than I have. I hope there's some thought being put into just rendering, you know, just essentially there being a whole flood of all of these coming to an existence at once from all the already designated properties, and how that would impact this whole process. But I'll move on to my next question. Will, you know, some of these areas that are receiving were recently designated in the master plan codification as transition areas, transition zone areas, for example, along Victoria Park, the RPO area as well. Will this allow receiving in transition areas to go above what the transition area would allow?
So there are certain things outlined. You're talking about for height specifically, correct?
Correct.
So for height specifically, there are a lot of different restrictions within the code as far as what could be allowable. The maximum allowable additional height in any receiving area is 3 stories. Majority of the time, it's 1 to 2 stories. So in the area that you're specifically referring to, I actually don't think it applies in those transition areas, but I'd have to take a closer look.
So it would be capped at 3 stories.
Yeah, that's the absolute max, and that's for RAC UV and RAC RPO. Then there's a few other districts where it is capped at basically 2 stories. Some are capped at 1 story, and I apologize, the Uptown Urban Village is capped at 45 feet additional height. So
Okay.
that does exceed the potential 3 stories.
Got it. Okay. And then if somebody had transferable development rights, would they be allowed to let's say they have, that property that was in RAC CC. It's only, the Tobler Law Office is 1 story tall. Let's say it's allowed to go 30 stories because it's in RAC CC. Can they transfer, 3 stories here and 3 stories there, or does it all have to be transferred at once?
They could do multiple transfers depending on what they qualify under.
How long is the transfer good for once it's been effectuated through DRC?
Well, the actual transfer is in perpetuity.
Okay. Great. That answers my questions. Thank you.
I see that Jackie has her hand raised.
Thanks. Where's Catherine? Anyway, I have a question. I'm a little concerned. And my concern is, can you put that slide back up with the other cities that tried this? And now they're not doing it?
Sure, give me just a minute.
I mean, I'm all for promoting and encouraging and giving people things to encourage historic preservation, but I'm a little concerned about the other cities. Coral Gables, how long has it been in existence there?
I don't know off the top of my head when their program was enacted. City of Miami's was enacted when they started Miami 21, and I'm not sure about Atlanta, Georgia.
When did they enact Miami 21?
That would be around 2010.
So it did work and now it's not effective. Why is that?
So this information is taken directly from a study that was conducted by Miami-Dade County. They did they had a report done on all sorts of incentives. One of them was looking at TDR programs and the feasibility. So this is their explanation of why it didn't work. As far as when the program was first established, the TDRs, the amount that was paid was sufficiently a substantial difference in the feasibility of major historic rehabilitation investment. But there's several bonus programs that exist in the city of Miami, and those bonuses were easier to get, like to pay into a bonus program to just get development rights in exchange rather than go through the TDR process.
So did you guys reach out to any other big historic cities around the country, like Charleston, like Savannah, and any of those types of cities have different programs, or just these 3 here? I guess I just want this to be good for historic preservation, and I'm not really sold on it.
Yeah, just going back to the city of Miami, this program that they're speaking right here is just for the transfer floor area. They have since enacted a program to do a transfer of density. We didn't look specifically at Charleston or at Savannah, but in putting together the ordinance, we did look at multiple other cities and best practices of how how TDR programs work throughout the country. And there's several reports that have been written over time that provide best practices of what shouldn't and shouldn't be included.
Did, has the historic preservation, you might have said this already, I apologize if it's redundant. Has the historic preservation,
Jackie, you're cutting out. Jackie? Jackie. Okay, we're gonna get back to Jackie. Mary?
Okay, I'm sorry. I was going to ask you the same questions about the other cities, but what also I would like to know what public outreach
it was
have
my
you,
question.
excuse me, I've had my hand up for probably 25 minutes.
No, I didn't know if she answered my question because I got like.
Guys.
All right, go ahead.
Mary, we had a lot of hands up.
No, I
see-
understand.
Jackie, finish up. You cut out on us and I thought you dropped off.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to know what the answer to my question was, and then Mary can take over.
Remind us of your question.
Whether or not the HPBs had any interaction with this TDR. Has it gone to them? Have they talked about it? Were they involved at all?
Yes, they received more or less the same presentation in August to review the TDR program. They had specific questions about how the program would function, but some of that information we don't necessarily have because this is a policy that would be set to enable the program to function, but it's operated off of the real estate market. So demand on either side. And those are the questions we can't necessarily answer as far as what the demand will be for this program once it's enabled. And
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Mary, go ahead. Sorry about that.
Yes, Mary.
What outreach have you, public outreach have you done on this?
So for this specifically, what we usually do for this type of amendment, we sent a memorandum to the Council of Fort Lauderdale Civic Associations, actually twice, to inform them of the proposed amendments. And I also sent additional email communications to parties that are interested in historic preservation incentives in general.
Well, I'm wondering if it's possible, there's so many questions tonight, and I'm wondering if it's possible to have a virtual forum on this to give people in the community a chance to, people who are interested in historic preservation, as well as people who might be interested in exercising their rights to do this, a chance to come and comment on it. That's one question. And then going back to your chart on why it didn't work in other cities, did you call and talk to other cities? Did you or did you research it on the internet? How did you arrive at that information?
Of what is shown on the screen specifically, or?
Yeah, you had that screen, and Jackie had asked, and I also had a series of questions on why it did or didn't. But I know you cut it from what they wrote, but I'm wondering, did you also talk to people in those cities?
So yeah, this information is taken directly from a study that was conducted in Miami-Dade County by a company called Place Economics that specializes in economics and historic preservation. They're a very well-renowned organization. And so this information is directly from that report. I didn't reach out to any of these groups specifically, but in full disclosure, I worked at the City of Miami and was the coordinator for TDRs. So I have direct experience with that. And then I looked at a number of other studies in preparing the proposed ordinance that are publications and have been written by people that are considered experts in TDRs.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Jay, you've already spoken. I'm going to jump in. Tricia, how does one become a contributing applicant?
You mean for the sending site?
Yes, how does one become a sending site?
So a sending site is a property that is designated as a historic landmark or an archaeological site or a landmark site. So for those examples, you would have to designate your property as a historic resource in the city of Fort Lauderdale. And there's a process that a property owner would have to go through to do that. There's also a number of properties that are already designated. There's approximately 60 that are locally designated in the city right now. And then the other aspect of a contributing property within a historic district, we currently have that language enabled in our historic preservation ordinance to allow for a property to be considered a contributing property. But like I mentioned before, within Sailboat Bend, as an example, we don't have those assignments of status just yet. We do have a proposal that is available, and we've been talking to the community about it, but it hasn't been fully adopted. And so at this time, no property, like properties at large within the Sailboat Bend Historic District aren't eligible for the program, but there are a few individually designated properties within the boundary of the district that are eligible.
So Tricia, I'm picturing, and Jay, I know your hand is up. I'm picturing, playing devil's advocate, I'm picturing a gold rush on historic properties by people wishing to expand height or density on their properties. And is all that is required is that an agreement is reached between the sending property and the receiving property. There's no trigger that must occur on the sending property other than to have an agreement and go through your process. With the receiving property, I would assume there's a financial agreement with regards to that, but is that all that happens? There's no requirement that the sending property be going through some sort of development. It's just that they have to be one of your properly designated properties.
Correct. And the point is to not have it be going through a development process because it's to protect the historic resource by selling your excess development rights.
So you're protecting the historic resource by providing additional compensation to the historic resource owner, correct?
Correct. And as part of that, the full application process, the historic property owner has to enter into a restrictive covenant to ensure the preservation of the property. And that's connected to a maintenance agreement and a plan for the preservation of the property.
Okay, so Jay, you've been waiting patiently.
Thank you. And I know I have a lot of questions, but there's a lot going on here. One question for Tricia, one question for Shari. Tricia, if I understand correctly, it seems you need to designate your property as historic first before you're approved for these transferable development rights. What incentive does that really give a property owner if there's a chance they'll designate their property historic and maybe not get those property rights?
I'm not sure if I understand your question.
Does your property need to be designated as historic first before you're eligible to be granted transferable development rights?
So yes, your property has to be designated as a historic property before you can
So let's say
qualify as a sending site.
Let's say I have a property and I would like to participate in this new program in exchange for these transferable development rights. Why would I designate my property as historic without being guaranteed that I'm going to get those rights?
Jay, I would say that that property owner is putting the cart before the horse. In other words, why would someone purchase property, historic property, without, I just think that that's putting the cart before the horse. And Tricia, you are the applicant, so I did not mean to steal your thunder.
Can I say something, Jay, to you?
Yeah.
I have a property that I'm considering designating my property historic, and everybody's telling me, what are you, crazy? It's gonna, you're gonna lose value because right now this property does X, right? So this takes that person that they can be comfortable, that they can designate that property, and if this is written correctly, not lose those rights. So it's a great argument to say designate it. You're still going to have those rights and they're going to be sellable. And your question is, if I'm not guaranteed of it, I'm going to be a little concerned.
Yeah,
right?
the issue, Jackie, is that like you're considering doing it because you're a great person and you love historic
No,
properties.
that's the whole motivation. Anybody's going to do it.
No, the whole motivation, the whole purpose of creating a financial incentive is so that people can get this financial incentive in exchange for designating the property as historic. They're not going to just designate it historic and hope they get that incentive. They're going to need to know that they're getting that incentive in order for them to be willing to.
I agree with you, as long as but I would imagine during this process, Tricia, they're going to be, maybe they're not guaranteed, but I don't think things are going to be denied of their right if they end up designating it historic. Part of the process is going to be making sure staff tells you, yes, you will have that right to apply once you designate your property. Therefore, you're not going to really lose anything. You can go ahead and anyway.
Sherry, I saw Sherry weigh in.
Yes, I just wanted to assist a little bit. So yes, that is correct that it has to be designated first, with the exception of if your property is a contributing property located in the historic district, you wouldn't have to do anything other than keep your property. But as far as the process goes, there is something that occurs before the certificate of transfer. So before it's even transferred, there's a certificate of eligibility, which pretty much is a calculation of how much development rights that you actually have. And that is a process that you go through prior to it transferring to the receiving site. So I just wanted to clarify that it's not just a transfer automatically, that there's a certificate of eligibility that comes first, where you apply for that, and then there is a calculation as to what development rights you actually have.
But aren't you going to educate people as they come in to want to designate, and they want to be assured not losing anything? Isn't that going to be part of the process? You are going to educate them on those rights? And with
well, they don't apply to me, so I believe that staff would let them know about the code provision, but just keep in mind that not everyone that wants to designate their property will comply with the requirements. They can't just say, I want to designate my property because I want to transfer development.
No, I'm not,
rights.
and I'm not suggesting that. I understand that. But what I'm suggesting is, how is this really going to work unless the staff can really assure people that if you do this, you're not going to lose rights because you're eligible. Otherwise, I'm not thinking about the person that's just going to buy a property designated to get more rights. I'm thinking about the incentive to designate properties and know that you're not going to lose your rights and the value. The value is why people don't designate historic.
Right.
So well, I can't speak. I can't speak.
I don't know that this
I've
is going to do it.
Arguments. Yeah, I've heard various arguments of. Yes, I've heard various arguments of the reluctance to designate properties, but I've also heard other arguments from folks that have studied the city of Miami Beach, which some have argued that their property values actually went up. So I can't really discuss, individual persons' situations with designating properties, but I just will say that staff nor I can guarantee that you will be able to transfer your development rights. The purpose of this ordinance is to encourage folks to to designate their properties as historic and to preserve the historic and archaeological sites in the city. And this was a directive that came from the City Commission. This is a policy decision that they have been encouraging us to do for years now. So we are just simply complying with the policy decision that the Commission has directed us to do.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you have any other questions?
Yeah, and it's a wonderful thing, and I don't think anybody disagrees with that, Shari. I think that my personal, if we're offering guidance here or voting on something, well, whatever we're doing, my suggestion would be to have, if we actually want this to work, like unless we want to be on the list of cities that it doesn't work in, I would suggest that we allow people to have the historic designation pending but contingent upon receipt. It doesn't sound as altruistic as just designating something as historic, but that would actually allow it to become an incentive and be a program that works. But my other question for you, Shari, was, you say that somebody gets transferable development rights and then it goes to site plan approval. Once somebody has that, how do you see that as the city attorney playing out when somebody then has the right to do more floors through transferable development rights, but does not have that right through what the existing zoning allows? Like, is it going to just, what's the game theory there? Like, does it just imply that they're allowed to go forward with it anyway? Or is there an implied approval of any sort?
No, there's no implied approval, and the purpose really of this is to provide the opportunity to utilize those development rights. And we don't want to commingle this with a site plan approval because there's different criteria. There's criteria here simply to transfer your development rights. We don't want to get into the site plan. That's separate criteria. And frankly, that we don't even know who that would go to. That could go to staff or that could go to you all. So we're not going to get into review that you all may be doing. So we're not doing that. But I cannot guarantee that there will be an approval, and that's really for the protection of the city.
I have another question, Catherine, may I?
No, Jackie, we've got an order. Jay, are you finished? Okay. Bill.
I mean, all of the discussion back and forth, and I was raising my hand mostly because I agree with Jay. I think these things have to go hand in hand. I think at some point in time, if they're going to decide that historic is the way they want to go, they've got to know what those rights, that they're going to have are. You don't want to go historic and then find out you can't get those rights. And I'm also a little bit confused if you're going to a receiving party, and what happens if that receiving party doesn't get approval for their project? What happens to those transfer rights?
Thank you, Bill.
Well, the transfer rights remain on the property in perpetuity. That's what we have in the ordinance. And as far as the site plan goes, it would be evaluated on that criteria that is before the proper board or before DRC. But that those rights would remain. The site plan review would be separate.
Bill, are you good?
I'm not good. I think, at least from my perspective, I think there's a lot of unanswered questions, and I think it's, a great thing that we're talking about, but I think there's still a lot of questions that need to be answered and some direction that needs to be answered, at least for me personally.
I understand that, Bill, and I agree with you, but I am of the personal opinion that I'm prepared to kick this to the next level, the City Commission. We have highlighted for them many number of issues here that need to be addressed. It's my understanding that the city practice takes a long time. And so to save months, I'm willing, despite all of my misgivings, to kick it to the next level because I think we'll just save a lot of time on a very important issue, even though there are many questions. Mary.
I'm concerned, particularly after our motion last month, which we'll talk about later, about kicking it to the next level until we clarify a couple of these issues. And I'm thinking that Trisha's done a lot of background. She's got a great background to do this. She's done a lot of background work on it, but she sees our concerns and maybe she can get some answers to those. And I really, if we haven't had actual conversations with impacted communities, I think that's critical to talk to them about how this could impact them and how they would want to participate in the process. So I almost would like, I agree with you that we don't want to hold it up for long, but I would like to just get some more clarity on some of the issues that Jay and Bill have raised and that Jackie's raised, and then also try to have some kind of a public meeting where people can actually talk. I know we all get 9 million emails from the city, and so that's my concern, is that we need to do something else. We need to set a meeting and see if anybody will come and work with organizations who do this. So I would like us to, I wouldn't want to go through this whole conversation again, but I would almost like to see us, let me just ask you, Tricia, is there any kind of outreach you could do that could answer some of these questions fairly quickly?
I'm not entirely sure. It's maybe something we will have to discuss, but just to remind you, this is an optional program that that people could participate in. It's not required of anyone. And there are a number of reasons why people designate their properties historic. It doesn't always hinge on having an incentive, although it helps. And this would just enable property owners to participate in this program if they qualify. And not everyone will.
It's an incentive
But
program.
it's an
Incentive.
yeah, exactly. This might be my comment. It's an incentive, so we want people to participate. And I think it's important to have the incentive be correctly phrased to get that participation. So I don't know, Catherine, I know we can just move this on, but I'm almost more inclined to say, could we just try to get some clarity on the issues that are confusing before we send it to the commission? And anyways, all right, that's my thought. And I'm happy to make a motion to defer, and I can't hear you.
Mary,
Yes.
we have other commentary. Jackie?
Yeah.
I just want to be clear on this. The part that I don't understand, Tricia and Shari, is this. I come into the city and I have a property that I want to designate historic. And I start that process. I don't understand why you would not have the ability to tell me about the incentives that I may or may not have based on what that criteria is. You see my property, you see the zoning. You can't guarantee it, but couldn't you educate me and say, you can apply for this, it's a process, and you do meet the criteria? If you don't do that, then there's really no incentive, or no one's going to be comfortable doing this. Or
Definitely.
some people will designate their property, but more people will be comfortable if you can have a process like that, in my opinion.
Well, we definitely have information that we share with anyone that's interested in designating as far as what incentives are available. Once, if this program is enacted and available, then we would have information available for all of the property owners that are currently designated, as well as people that are interested in designating, to understand what they could apply for, how they can apply for it, and what their potential excess development rights are. But until they actually apply for it and provide all of the documentation that we need, we can't certify how much development rights.
I understand that. I'm in favor of this. I just don't know if you've got it right yet.
Yeah, you're enriching people who have already historic property, but not incentivizing new historic designation.
All right, thank you, everyone. So I think we have had a full sounding of opinions. Do we have a motion or wait, public hearing?
Chair Moss, this is Yvonne Redding. There's no one signed up to speak on this item, and no one has their hand raised.
Yvonne, how lucky for you that you have the last item on the agenda.
Only because Trisha had the big part.
Okay, so no, we have no members for the public hearing. So I'm going to ask if we have a motion.
What are the options?
A motion to approve. Or Shari, what is our other option?
I have my hand up in the chat when you get to it.
Shari, you're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
I'd like to make
Yeah.
a motion to approve, to move this along, by the way.
Okay, Brad, thank you. Hang on, Shari.
Okay. Okay, yes. Your options are a motion to recommend approval or a motion to recommend denial. You can also recommend approval with some suggestions. So those are your options.
Okay, well, I certainly hope we're not making a motion to approve with suggestions, because that would take all night. But
No. I motion to approve with the suggestion that the designation of the property becoming historic is revocable if the transferable development rights are not awarded.
May I just, Brad made a motion first, so I think you need a second.
Brad's motion was to kick it forward, motion to approve. Is there a second for that?
Well, Brad,
I'll second it.
John Bronco, I'll second.
All right, second by Coleman. Thank you, John. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Mary?
I had my hand up actually to see if we could defer this. I don't want to vote against it. I don't want it to go down. But I guess we'll just vote on it, and if it goes down, then we'll.
Okay.
But on the other hand, I think that we're passing it forward with too many questions, and it sounds like the Historic Preservation Board did the same thing. So I don't know that we're really going to accomplish anything, and we really need this in place in the city. So actually, I'll just make a motion to defer, and then y'all can vote that down if you don't want to.
All right, so we have to wait because there is a motion on the table. It's a motion to approve. We had a motion and a second. Sorry.
I'm moving to defer that motion.
So, Bridget, we're ready to vote on Brad's motion to approve.
Ms. Scott,
No.
Mr. Cohen,
No.
Wait a minute. What are we voting on?
Motion to approve the application.
Okay, I just want to make sure. Okay, no.
Vice Chair Fertig,
No.
Mr. Prewitt,
Yes.
Mr. Rotella,
No.
Mr. Bronco,
Yes.
Mr. Scheckman,
No.
Chair Moss,
Yes, motion fails. 6-3, I think. Bridget will be the ultimate authenticator of that number.
5-3.
5-3. Is there another motion?
Yes, I'm moving to defer
I
this
second.
for
Motion
2 months.
By Mary, second by Jackie.
Comment. What will deferral accomplish? Will they be able to change the incentive, or will they just come back with more examples?
Okay, so
No one can answer that question.
I'm moving to defer for 2 months. Well, that puts it in December, which is probably not a good time frame. But I don't want to make it really long, so I'll defer it 2 months, and then my intent would be that we get some of these questions answered. Unless Tricia, you want me to do it for 1 month?
So my comment is, I recall us being told we do not have the ability to move to defer. Shari?
Yes, I don't see that you don't have the ability to defer. The only problem is that we have answered all of the questions that you've asked of us. We probably just haven't given you the answers you want. So my point is that if you have suggestions on what you'd like us to change in the ordinance, we'll be glad to do so. To evaluate it, at least not necessarily change it, but evaluate it, offline. But we've answered all of your questions. We just can't give you any other answers than what we've given you. So that's my only comment.
I questioned whether we could set up some kind of a meeting with people who are, people from organizations and people from neighborhoods that either have contributing buildings or have historic designations or are thinking about it, to get their feedback and see what this would do. And I think Jay was suggesting, on the other hand, that we also include in the conversation people who might want to consider this if there were an incentive, and what that incentive would be for them. That would be one thing, just a meeting to have that conversation. And two, the second thing I could think of is if we didn't look at a few of the other cities that we discussed that would have this policy, to call them and see if there's anything that would be responsive to the questions that Bill and Jay raised.
So I am not a fan of doing things piecemeal. All of us had comments and suggestions, and in order for them all to be incorporated, since the motion to kick it on failed, I think the only thing we can do is defer. And Shari said we could do that. I don't think we are going to craft a legislative document tonight. All of our comments are part of the record. And so I would recommend that we move to defer.
And I think you have a motion on the floor.
Well, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Yes, I second it.
Second, yeah.
Motion and second by Jackie. Discussion?
Yeah, I don't know that deferral will really do anything. I would suggest that we approve with a recommendation.
Jay, did you vote to approve first time around?
No, because there was no recommendation made, Catherine.
Okay.
I just don't see how we come to a recommendation tonight. I really don't. I think there's so many things that are outstanding. And
Mary, so do we have a motion and a second?
Yes.
To defer.
To defer.
To defer. And Jay, you made a comment. Do we have any other comments? I see Bill's hand up.
I'm sorry. I agree with what the motion, or at least what Jay was suggesting before. So if this deferral does not pass and Jay makes another motion, I think he kind of he captured, at least in one sentence, what I would agree should have to happen.
Okay, so right now I see no other hands. We have a motion.
Madam Chair, could I just ask a question? We already advertised this with the Historic Preservation Board, and I think one or two people may have shown up. Very few people showed. And usually when we have issues concerning the Sailboat Bend Historic District, a lot of people come, a lot. And so my only comment would be that if you're asking for additional outreach from staff, that's something different than holding a special meeting, because we've already now had two meetings, one with Historic Preservation Board and one with Planning and Zoning Board, and no one has shown up here tonight. And so I only would suggest to clarify, because if staff is being asked to do additional outreach, that's something different. I don't recommend a special meeting, because we've already utilized staff resources to have both of these meetings on this ordinance, and very few folks have shown up.
I understand that, Shari, but we have a lot more comments on the table than just public outreach. So I don't think that solves all of our problems. So again, we have a motion and a second on the table. Bridget, I think we're ready to call the roll.
Okay. So just to clarify, you're requesting a special meeting involving this ordinance?
No, we're requesting a deferral.
No.
Right, the deferral, but I'm just asking for the purpose of the deferral is to do, I heard what Mary said, but I just want to clarify that the meeting with the
purposes of the deferral is to answer all the many questions that were raised tonight.
And maybe make some changes.
Thank you, Jack.
Okay, but I heard something about meeting with folks, so I just wanted to clarify that.
Board member.
Well, I would just tell you that I know you advertised the historic preservation meeting and the planning and zoning meeting, but it's not the same as a call out to, we have this special thing that we're trying to create. There are other parts of the beach is a good example where this is something that's really needed. And if you were to say, advertise a meeting specifically on point, I think that's different.
Mary, I disagree.
Okay.
I think they've advertised it.
Okay, that's fine.
Issue. I think if you're looking at a property that carries these benefits,
yeah,
you're going to be all over this. You're going to be calling the city. You're going to be talking to staff. Anyways.
But Catherine, if we defer this, if we vote to defer it, my purpose is, and I think I could speak for Jay and Bill, is for them to come back with more concrete ways of giving the property owner the ability to have those rights. Or it just sounds so, I don't know. I just don't like it.
I believe this record is loaded with avenues of improvement. Anyone that would listen to the transcript of this meeting would know what our concerns are. So I would like to take a vote. We have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? I'm looking over at my panelists column and I do not see any hands raised. I'm looking at my screen. No one is waving at me. So Bridget, may we call the roll?
Vice Chair Furtick.
Motion to defer, yes.
Thank you. Mr. Prewitt,
No.
Mr. Rotella,
No.
Mr. Bronco,
No.
Mr. Scheckman,
No.
Ms. Scott,
Yes.
Mr. Cohen,
Yes.
Chair Moss
Yes, motion
is a
tie. So that means it's a no. Is that correct, Bridget?
sorry.
Sorry?
That's correct. It fails when it's a tie, so there should be another motion, or I recommend another motion.
I'd like to make a motion.
Yes, Jay?
I move to approve with the recommendation to commission that applicants have the right to have the historic designation of their property contingent upon receipt of the transferable development rights.
Is that workable, Tricia and Shari?
That is something that we'll have to evaluate because it's completely different criteria. So we'll just have to talk offline about that. I haven't seen any other city with that. I know that you saw a PowerPoint with 3 cities, but there's lots of other cities that have that. I just haven't seen the transfer of development rights program. I just haven't seen anything like that in any other ordinance, but I will be glad to talk with staff offline about that and evaluate it with them.
I understand. I would just like to comment, Jay, that your question assumes people will be coming into the city and purchasing historic properties specifically with the intent to transfer development rights. And I just don't know how many people there are like in that position.
Well, there definitely won't be any if we pass it as drafted.
Well, I'm just questioning how many there are out there to anyways. So Jay, you made a motion to approve. Where are my notes? I made a note. Say it again.
Move to approve with the recommendation that applicants have the right to have the historic designation of their property contingent upon receipt of the transferable development rights.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
Second by?
Bill.
All right, any discussion?
I have my hand up in chat.
Yes, Mary.
I would just like, here's my concern. Last month, we passed 4 motions to suggest amendments to the downtown master plan. When it came last night, staff had not evaluated those, and the master plan passed as well as it had come to us with those motions, those amendments that we all unanimously recommended being brought at a later date when staff has time to evaluate it. So if we're doing this, Jay, there's nothing to say that they'll get this evaluated before it actually goes to the commission. And it will go to the commission in the same form that it came to Historic Preservation Board and to us. And, you know, I mean, I'm at just the point, we've been on this for an hour. I'm going to do what everybody wants. I think this is a really important matter to several areas in the city. And I really don't feel that it's fully done yet. And I feel like it should be before we pass it on. And we can sit here and make 10 recommendations, but they're going to have the same fate as what we did last time to the downtown master plan. And I will discuss that under the good of the city, but I have real concerns about it.
Jackie.
I don't want to, I guess I really want to defer this so that all of us individually have the ability to do our own research. All of us can meet again and come up with a recommendation that staff can live with, something that's being done in other cities, and then kick it onto the commission. I mean, I'm afraid that I agree with Mary said. I'm disappointed that you guys didn't vote to defer this, to give us that opportunity. We are the planning board. I mean, it's part of our job function. So
Jack,
I don't want to, you know.
That vote was 4-4, by the way. But back to Jay, we have a motion and a second on the table. Do I have any other conversation? I do not see it. Jay, remind us what that motion is.
The motion was to approve with the recommendation that applicants have the right to have the historic designation of their property contingent upon receipt of the transferable development rights.
Okay, Bridget, we're ready.
Okay, Mr. Prewitt,
No.
Mr. Rotella,
Yes.
Mr. Barranco,
No.
Mr. Scheckman,
Yes.
Ms. Scott,
No.
Mr. Cohen,
No.
Vice Chair Fertig,
No.
Chair Moss,
No. Motion fails. I have it as 6-2.
correct.
Do we have another motion?
I'd like to make a motion.
Jackie.
I would like to make a motion to defer this for 1 month so that we have the opportunity to discuss this further and make a decision to pass it on or to make recommendations to staff to make changes that we think would be appropriate to incentivize people and make them comfortable to designate their properties historic, because that's the purpose.
I'll second that.
Motion by Jackie, second by Jay. Any discussion? I see none. Bridget, we're ready.
All right, Mr. Rotella,
Can I hear that motion one more time?
The motion is to defer this for 1 month. So we come back and discuss this again, Bill, with specific recommendations based on, you know, what anyone's going to find out in the next month, so we can, you know, kick something to the city commission that we're all comfortable with. That's our function.
Yes.
Just if I may interject, this is Shari. Just to be clear, you're not requesting anything of staff, right? Or you're not requesting anything of us?
Well, Shari.
No, not at this point. I'm not.
Okay. Okay. Just checking. I'm just checking.
Shari, I would say that a lot of questions have been raised in this evening, and that when this item comes back in a month pursuant to Jackie's motion, that some of these questions might be answered.
Chair, if I could, this is Ella. We're not sure what the questions are. I mean, I understand as the questions were asked, they were answered, but could we just get some more specific directions to what we're coming back with?
It's all about the it's all about the rights.
Jackie,
Sorry.
I'm going to do it by way of roll call. So Jackie, what are your suggestions to staff?
My suggestions to staff is come up with a way to not necessarily guarantee those rights, but make it part of the process when someone is coming in to get a historic designation. So that's an educational process. You educate them and tell them this is what the criteria is. It appears that you meet that. You'll have to apply for it. And that's not, none of that's really being said. And that's why I'm not.
Any other suggestions, Jackie?
Pardon me?
Any other suggestions?
No.
Okay. Jay, suggestions?
Yes, exactly what you said that you could look into a few moments ago, Shari, if you could just look into that and let us know. That's regarding the ability for people to have their designation
Up front.
upon.
You're asking, Jay?
I'm sorry?
A guarantee up front. You wanted a guarantee up front.
Yeah, or to have it revocable, the historic designation revocable.
Okay. Bill, any suggestions to staff before it comes back to us?
I'm definitely open to evaluating having it revocable. So I just wanted to make that clear for the record. We will discuss that offline.
Thank you. Bill?
I'm good.
Okay. Brad?
I'm good.
Jay? Jay, I did you. John?
No, I'm fine. I totally agree with what Jackie said.
Okay. Coleman?
I'm good.
Okay. So, and I'm good. So with those suggestions, Mary?
I would just like to add, is there anything preventing me, Shari, from reaching out in a community meeting, as long as no other planning and zoning members are on it, to talk with people in the community about what they think about this?
Oh, there's nothing at all preventing you from doing so.
Okay, thank you. And secondly, the question that I was hoping to have staff answer, because I think they're going to get the better answer, is to contact some of these other cities and see if they've actually heard of this being done and what they've done to really be successful. So.
Okay, I just want to clarify for the record that I did have conferences. This is Shari for the record. I did have conferences with the deputy city attorney at the time for the city of Miami Beach. She indicated the program was successful. I did also have a conference with the Sunny Isles Beach, the city attorney at the time. He indicated that the program was successful, but once again, they did not have anything providing revocable or contingency on historic designation. So I just wanted that to be clear. But we have reached out. I have reached out personally to other cities, but staff and I will be glad to do more of that.
Thank you for clarifying that. I appreciate it. I'm ready. I'm sorry, Catherine, to hold you up.
No problem. I need to be reminded, Bridget, we had a motion. Did we have a second? And what was it for?
Oh, no.
Okay.
Who made the motion?
Jackie made the motion.
What was it, Jackie? Motion to defer.
For 1 month.
Thank you. And we have voiced our issues for the record.
Yes.
Did we have a second?
Yes.
Good.
Jay, okay. And we've had discussion. So Bridget, we're ready to vote.
I found it finally. Okay. And it was Mr. Rotella. How do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Bronco?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Scheckman?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Vice Chair Fertig?
Yes.
Mr. Prewitt?
Yes.
And Chair Moss?
Yes, motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Bridget. Thank you, staff.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Item number 5, communication to the City Commission. Anyone?
Catherine?
Mary?
What could we hear from staff about our last communication to the city?
Which was,
hold on, let me grab the minutes. They're here somewhere. Ella, can you just, you know what we asked for presentation?
Yes, we
on John.
We have communicated with the Public Works Director, and he indicated that they will be helping us coordinate a presentation to you all at the November meeting. We will place that at the end of the agenda.
Fantastico.
Thank you. And I'm not ready for this to be a communication to the city, and it's late, so I'm going to say it really quickly here. We've had a number of issues lately where we have unanimously passed something, and it really, and what moves forward is the staff recommendation on something and then what we pass is considered as an amendment. So if we could at the next meeting, maybe set some time to have a conversation about what the process is for this committee. I feel like we're the planning board for the city and we're making recommendations to amend things or whatever, but that doesn't make it into the main body of the document and becomes something that's just a recommendation that's going to be considered after something's already passed.
I could support that if you could provide staff with some specific examples.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to see if other people on here are willing to have that conversation, and then I'll call Ella and we'll talk privately.
As long as I know that we are talking about specific concrete examples.
Yes. Okay.
Terrific.
Okay.
Any discussion on Mary's motion? Is there a second?
Second.
Jackie, second. Okay, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No opposition.
Aye.
I did not hear any opposition. Motion carries unanimously. Anything else under communication to the City Commission? Anything?
John was opposed.
Pardon me?
There was some opposition.
Oh, I'm sorry. John, did you oppose?
No, no, I did not. I just have a weird delay where I'm at. And
John,
I said yay, but it came out when you asked.
John, where are you?
I'm in Maine.
Oh,
wow. Okay.
I'm in Maine.
Beautiful.
Where in Maine?
Yeah. We are in Acadia, near the Acadia National Park.
Wow.
So
About that. Okay, back to the meeting. Anything under for the good of the city? I have no hands raised. No one's waving at me. Jay?
Motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Chair, could I just clarify the communication to the city commission, what that one that you voted on, what was the motion for that?
That was really not a communication to the city commission. That was something for us to have on our next agenda, an opportunity to discuss our role and processes.
All right, so we are not making a communication to the city.
I was not sending that to the city. I was going to call Ella, but I just felt like we could put it on as a conversation next month because I think it's too late to have it tonight.
Right, and we're going to have specific examples.
And yes, and we'll have it worked up,
okay,
and I haven't talked to Ella about this, so.
So next month, Mary, you're making a motion for communication to the city commission, and you'll have examples for us.
Next month, okay, let me do this maybe under for the good of the city. I don't know which one's best. My thing was that I think our board should talk about processes. I was alarmed last night when none of our amendments moved forward because staff said they needed to vet them better, our recommendations that we made unanimously at our last meeting. I don't really want to get into it tonight because I don't think we have a time to. I think it's just how, as a board, we process things. It's taken us a year to get this infrastructure presentation. We've made multiple motions to get there, and I just feel like we could be transacting. I just kind of want to have a conversation as a board about what our role is. So, okay. Hi there.
Yeah. In order to help us all, would you send an email to Ella and Ella
Yes.
only, outlining your concerns with specific examples?
Yes, I was going to call Ella so we would have the information for the conversation.
Well, but would you email her so that she could forward that email to all of us?
Oh, yeah. After
Okay.
I can talk to her first, right?
Terrific. Okay. Do we have anything else under for the good of the city?
Thing. Just wanted to give a shout out to Mark Williams, our city forester. We have this Adopt a Tree program that the Tarpon River Civic Association has been utilizing, where the city will come out and they'll plant an actual tree on your swale for you for free. It's absolutely transforming the tree amount of trees in our neighborhood, and it's going to contribute greatly to the tree canopy. And Mark has just gone above and beyond. He's really does an amazing job, and I think we're very lucky to have him.
Thank you so much. And I saw your post on Nextdoor and it was terrific. Brad, would you like to have your son move to close the meeting?
Do you want to close the meeting? Can you say the meeting is closed? Say the meeting is closed.
The meeting is closed.
Nice job. The thumbs up. Can you give the thumbs up? Thumbs up. Nice.
Any opposed? All right, meeting adjourned.
You did it.
Thank you, Ella. Thank you, Shari. Thank you, Trisha.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank
guys.
you.
Bridget.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.